Hey y'all, welcome back to the Tripod 2500, the official YouTube channel for the Tripod podcast. If this is your first time here, welcome, and to everyone else, welcome back. This channel is meant to supplement the podcast by taking a deeper dive into the work of Tripod guests. For today's Tripod review, I will be covering the TU Press publication, Iceland Summer, Travels Along the Ring Road by Kurt Caswell. Usually I have my paperback copy of the book, but I loved this book so much that I actually, right after finishing it, gave it to a friend to read right away. So I actually don't have my paper copy anymore. But obviously I've taken many a note, and it's all in here. Lots and lots of notes on Iceland Summer. And I've also had the opportunity to interview Kurt Caswell on Tripod about Iceland Summer. So despite not having my paper copy, I think I'm ready to give a review of Iceland Summer. So to start, let's do a brief summary of Iceland Summer. So Iceland Summer is an illustrated travel narrative about Kurt Caswell's journey traversing the country of Iceland by foot and by bus with his lifelong friend Scott. And they travel clockwise along the ring road. The pair stop along the way for backcountry walking trips and camping trips and many other adventures, including, but not limited to, eating Icelandic hot dogs, eating puffin, drinking fermented grain mash, glimpsing a legendary lake monster, and visiting the world's only penis museum. So, very entertaining book. In addition to sharing all these adventures, Caswell also meditates on the value of wild places in the modern world, travel as a pastime and occupation, the nature of friendship, walking, food, literature, tons of great messages, which we're going to dive into in the review. So that's the summary. After having read Iceland Summer and interviewed Kurt Caswell in our episode Iceland Summer, Walking for Wonders, I have a lot to say, but I'll start with the structure and writing style, per the usual for the Tripod reviews. So from my conversation with Kurt, I learned that he diligently kept a journal across his journey to Iceland. There were many days on the trip where it was pouring rain, and a great way to pass the time was to take notes and write down the day's events and the plans for the next day and kind of meditations on the trip thus far. Also, when camping for such a long time, you're not bringing, your laptop and TV with you. What else is there to do but read and write and talk with your friends? So a great advantage to these downtimes and the nature of camping is that Kurt was taking really careful notes the entire time. So some of or most of the dialogue in the book is verbatim what Scott said or what Kurt said or what, somebody they met along the way had said. So it feels really truthful and authentic and engaging. You feel like you were really there. You heard what was said word for word. It doesn't have this fluffy edited dialogue or, what I might have said. So I really liked that about the structure. So that's just a credit to Kurt's great note-taking and research skills. Also, because the dialogue is so accurate, it gives a great insight into Kurt and Scott's relationship and who Scott is. I obviously, having met Kurt after reading Iceland Summer, I had a really good image of who he was while I was reading it, and I didn't have as good of a view of Scott, but I found that what I had thought of in my head through the dialogue was really accurate to who Kurt says Scott is. So that's just another testament to the really great dialogue. The story is also broken down into their individual adventures. So the part about, eating the Icelandic hot dogs and visiting the penis museum are broken into chapters. So it helps move the nonfiction sort of travel log along. Sometimes it's really easy to get stuck in how much walking there actually is, but for this book, that was not the case, and things just moved along so well. In addition to the structure, there's also great illustrations in there. It not only move the story along, but there is a lot of folklore and legends in New Zealand, or in Iceland's history and their culture. So there's a lot of mentions of fairies and sprites and trolls and things like that, which you have a mental image of, but through the illustrations you get this whole new perspective on what those creatures might look like or where they might have lived in Iceland. So that was a really enjoyable part of this travelogue. An illustrated travelogue is unique in of itself, but it really did help the story as well. In addition to the sort of physical structure, Kurt has great philosophical thoughts that don't feel preachy or fabricated. It really feels like just genuine thoughts and theories that came out of his experience in such a beautiful, untouched part of the world. So I really enjoyed that. Usually, in having read other nonfiction or creative nonfiction travel stories, sometimes it feels like there's no way you thought that at the time. Like you were dying of hiking and you were exhausted. There's no way you had this deep, beautiful thought. But a lot of the times, Kurt's thoughts come from seeing something and really thinking about it and writing through it. It's not like he doesn't pretend to have come up with it on the spot immediately. He talks about having ruminated on it and how the whole experience comes together. So I really liked that. And I think that'll do it for my structural takeaways. There are so many things I could say about how great his writing style is, but I think you should read it for yourself and see all that great stuff. And I'll move on to the takeaways. I'm going to break these down to people, takeaways, places, and planet, because that's the tagline of Tripod, is people, places, planet. So it seemed only fitting that the reviews should fit the same structure. So my people-related takeaways, which is going to be the individual and community takeaways, is that lifelong friendships are such a gift. Scott and Kurt's dynamic is really fun to witness, and it gives a whole new meaning to this amazing adventure, because you start picturing you and your own friends or friends you might have talked to in a long time going on this same trip and the discussions you might have. So it really encouraged me to reach out to friends and plan trips and stuff, because life is short and you should plan those things when you have the chance. And in addition to my own friends, it really had me thinking about the people in Iceland who were very friendly, highly literate, and obsessed with books. And it's very different. Obviously, I'm in Texas, the United States. We're not the most literate nation, nor are we the most friendly. So it was really interesting to read about a country and community that is renowned for their literacy and their book-loving nature. It's like, I think it's like 1 in 10 Icelanders publish a book. So it's crazy statistics on that. So I wanted to definitely spend less time on my phone, more time reading. So I'm glad I get to do these book reviews, because it gives me a chance to really appreciate these books that sometimes I have to really churn through in order to prepare for tripod episodes. So take your time and take your notes on your books, because it'll help you and other people learn more. And a last part on the people was getting to know, a lot of what Kurt does is get to know the Icelanders and other travelers. And he openly talks about how when he first runs into other travelers, he's a little hesitant to spend time with them because he's not sure if they're safe or things like that. But what he found is that so many people were just overjoyed to be in this beautiful setting, and it enhanced his experience getting to have meals with these people and share how sore their feet were and things like that. So it's really uniting these experiences. Travel is it brings people together. And it inspired me to want to have that perspective on people I meet in my day-to-day as well, of everyone is going through their own adventure or challenge of the day, and choosing to engage with others as I would if I was, in a foreign place where I needed to rely on people for help. It seemed like a good idea to try out. So those were my people takeaways. And then the place was that there are so few places like Iceland that are still untouched, and we have to care for them. This was sort of similar to my takeaway from Out There by Lance Garland, is just like, we have to do better than just not leave a trace when we're out there in the world. You have to leave it better than you found it. And I think Kurt and Scott do a really good job of trying their best to leave no trace, or do better than that by writing stories like this and just touting how beautiful these places are and that we have to care for them. So that was my place takeaway, in addition to, although travel isn't like travel to Iceland and, cross-country travel isn't accessible to everyone, walking and going around and engaging in your community is more accessible to everybody. Or even just learning about your community is more accessible. And that's just as important. There's beauty and whimsy and folklore, legend all around us if you open your eyes to look at it, and don't just go through your day like it's any other time. It's if you embrace it like you just traveled to Iceland and you want to remember every single thing about it, it's going to feel different. So I've, from so many To You Press books I've read, this is a similar message, but this one really brought it home with the illustrations and how you can look at the world with a touch of fantasy and whimsy, because there's trolls and the lake monster and all those things. So that was something I really enjoyed about the book. And lastly, my planet takeaways kind of go back to the people of the Iceland is so highly literate and book oriented. I think there's a lot we can learn from Iceland and what Kurt shares about it. And also that Kurt's perspective on being in nature is something we should all engage with. So if you go and you read this book, you're going to learn a lot about his perspective on nature and life. And if you listen to the tripod episode, again, so much to learn from how he took in this travel experience and now shares it with others. So those were my takeaways, and my kind of question to myself and anyone listening is, how can I become more observant and find whimsy in my world? So I'm working on that, but I think reading Iceland Summer is a great place to start, so I can't recommend it enough. And that was the tripod review for Iceland Summer. I hope you enjoyed. Bye.